Nick Houseman, a seasoned leader.
One example is an aircraft that I know that we operated is a Boeing 747. In 1 year, it emitted 66,000 tons.
Okay,
That's just one aircraft.
Huge number.
Yes. Yeah. I think India can play a big role in SAF. India is a tiny market as a part of the global market.
What are the current trends in relation to?
The first thing you need to do is measure. Because if you don't know what you're emitting, how can you do anything about it?
Business aviation is actually to support businesses. It's not just leisure. Is it still the mindset? I don't think so, but I would like to hear from you.
View in the US is time is money. Somebody needs to look at the whole process and say, how do we make this better?
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Legit Talk with Lovejeet, where we dive into hard facts and real insights. My guest today is Nick Houseman, a seasoned leader in global business aviation and sustainability. In this conversation, we will explore the realities of Indian business aviation market, compare it with more mature global markets, and uncover what lies ahead. Nick has founded and scaled companies such as Zenith, Elitavia, Azera, shaping both aircraft management and green aviation strategies worldwide. With decades of experience and a distinguished career at Bombardier, he offers a rare perspective at the intersection of aviation growth and environmental responsibility. So hi Nick, and welcome to the show. Welcome to Legit Talk with Lovejeet.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
You're welcome. So Nick, we will start with what your current focus is, which is, sustainable aviation fuel, greenhouse emissions, how to control that. So as you have co-founded Azera, which particularly focuses on greenhouse emissions in the aviation side. So would like to know more about, what are the current trends in relation to sustainable aviation fuel across the globe, or how to cut down this, greenhouse emissions, and particularly if you can focus on business aviation, since today we are discussing business aviation.
Sure. So Azera actually grew out of business aviation. So my background is as an owner of an operator in Europe. The compliance scheme in Europe covers greenhouse gas emissions for operators. So that started in 2021. So as an operator, we had to comply with the ETS scheme there. So I saw the opportunity there to develop a platform that could help operators measure their greenhouse gas emissions. Recently, the European Union has added SAF as a requirement for operators to use. So the platform is continuously being developed to help operators manage their compliance obligations and SAF usage, because in Europe, at least, under the compliance scheme, using SAF gives you a benefit under the compliance scheme.
Okay.
So my focus for getting into sustainability was aviation is one of those industries very hard to decarbonize because changing out the technology means essentially changing the aircraft.
That's true.
And that is not in the near future. So the question is, what can we do about it today? The first thing you need to do is measure. Because if you don't know what you're emitting, how can you do anything about it?
That's true.
And then the second part of it is really sustainable aviation fuel and how that can help decarbonize aviation. So that's been my focus.
Okay. So first is measuring the emissions. And of course, you might be sharing this data with, say, SAF manufacturers and, OEMs, so that this can be taken into account while in the future manufacturing of the engines and.
So I mean, if you think about aircraft and emissions for aircraft, most people have no idea what aircraft emit. So take a large aircraft like a Global 6000, Gulfstream 650. You're emitting 5 tons of carbon per hour. So it's not a small amount. If you move to, let's say, an older Boeing 747, you're emitting 30 tons an hour. So when you look at like commercial aviation, those aircraft are operating 250, 300 hours a month. It's a huge number. One example is an aircraft that I know that we operated is a Boeing 747. In 1 year, it emitted 66,000 tons.
Okay.
That's just one aircraft.
Huge number.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you come to like a business jet, you're looking at probably 2,000, 2,500 tons a year. It's not an insignificant number. Once you start building up your fleet, and let's say you have 20 aircraft, it gets to be a big number.
Yeah.
The only way that you can really offset that at the moment is to buy carbon credits, which is one option. And then SAF. The challenge with SAF right now is there's really no SAF available.
Yeah.
So physically, to get your hands on SAF is very difficult. So I think right now, India, I'm here for a conference on SAF. I think India can play a big role in SAF because nobody really has the lead in sort of the global SAF industry. Yes, there's some production in the US, there's a little bit of production in Europe, but there's no real leader at the moment. So the conditions in India are sort of set such that it would make a lot of sense to develop SAF production here.
And especially the sort of raw material which is used for SAF production. So I think that we have ample of it in India. But what I think that although there's a momentum, India has started working on SAF and there are now SAF manufacturers, they are, developing it. But the way, the stage where it has reached in, say, US or Europe, India is slightly lagging behind. What do you think?
I think India is behind, but there's lots of opportunity to catch up. If you look at the US, there's 2 or 3 manufacturers, and they're not producing massive amounts. I mean, one big plant could probably overtake everybody else right away. And like you say, there's a lot of feedstocks here that can be beneficial for SAF production. If you look at the US and just what's happening in the US at the moment, I mean, obviously there's been a sort of rolling back of sustainability in the US with the new administration. But if you look at SAF production, a lot of the feedstocks are coming from farmers in the Midwest. So there hasn't really been a pullback on that because it's helping the farmers, have a revenue source. If you look at India, it could be the same sort of rationale. Get farmers to grow feedstocks for SAF production. India as a country, 85% of the oil is imported. So you're paying someone else for the oil. Could you generate enough SAF here that it reduces the amount that you have to import and gives a revenue source to the farmers?
So how's US and Europe, what is their target? I mean, when they intend to, say, substitute general fuel with SAF?
So over the last, say, 18 months, 18 months ago, it was, we want to get to 10% SAF usage by 2030.
I think that seems difficult, right?
Well, now it's become aspirational. I keep hearing this term. It's aspirational, meaning we're going to try, but we're going to fail. So the goal at the moment is 10% by 2030 and 65% by 2050. Okay. That's the goal of ICAO. So, I'm from Canada, and I know the Canadian Climate Action Plan. So they released a climate action plan in 2023 saying we want 10% usage by 2030. But there's no actual concrete steps to get there. So there's no support for SAF manufacturing. There's no real infrastructure for SAF. So it's great that everybody wants to get on the SAF train, but they don't want to buy any tickets. So it's very hard to see how this train is going to leave the station. That's why I think India has a good chance. If you get all the stakeholders involved, the biggest one being the government, then you can make some progress. Because SAF is only going to get off the ground with government help.
So I think, as you rightly said, across the globe, it's aspirational at the moment.
Yes. So if you look at SAF production right now, it covers about 0.3% of total consumption. which is tiny.
Yeah.
So to even go from 0.3 to 10% in the next essentially 4 years, that's
Seems difficult. Yeah.
difficult, yes. Aspirational.
Aspirational, of course, it's there.
Yes.
Yeah, it's there. Okay. So coming to the Indian market, so how would you compare the current size and growth trajectory of Indian business aviation with mature markets like, say, the US or Europe?
I operate in the US, so we operate aircraft in the US. Obviously, the US is the biggest market,
Yeah.
60% of global market. You've got approximately 15,000 business jets in the US, whereas in India, you have less than 200.
Yeah.
So, you've got 1% of the fleet that you have in the US. So India is a tiny, tiny market as a part of the global market, but it has a lot of potential. The economy here is growing massively. Obviously, there's wealth growth here. So the more that the wealth grows, the more that business aviation becomes something that people with the wealth want to move into business aviation. The challenge in India is the infrastructure. If you look at the US, you've got 20,000 airports. 5,000 of them approximately you can use. You've got about 700 airports that have commercial service in the US. If you look at India, we're talking maybe 150 airports that have got some level of commercial aviation. I think 35 of them have got international destinations. So in the US, if you want to use business aviation to get, let's say, closer to your plant or visit 3 or 4 different places in a day, there's usually an airport you can get to that is going to get you closer. The problem in India is, great, I landed at the airport, but then I still have to spend 90 minutes in a car getting to where I want to get to. That's not really what business aviation is about. It's getting you much closer and saving time.
Yeah.
The other issue is the infrastructure is, if you look at FBOs, there's probably about 3,000 FBOs in the US. If you look at India, there's maybe a handful.
Yeah.
So I'm buying a business jet, spending 30, 40, 50 million, but there's no gas stations. So it's kind of like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And in terms of the level of service, that's where I think India as a market, they need to map the whole chain as a service, not focus on the aircraft. What are we trying to achieve with these aircraft? You're trying to bring a very high level of service, but there's all these parts of it that just don't work.
Yeah.
Permitting, the authorities and their involvement in bringing an aircraft in, not just Indian registered aircraft, I'm talking about foreign registered. We've operated into India, and it is very difficult to get the permits in a timely manner. The whole point of business aviation is, you want to go tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, you go. That's the whole point and the flexibility.
Yeah.
But when it takes 3 days to get a permit, that slows everything down. It doesn't encourage people to use business aviation to get to India. The other challenge you have is, I'll give you an example of, we had an aircraft here that went AOG. So if you think about that whole chain, it took us 10 days to get the aircraft back into service. Because firstly, we're a foreign registered aircraft. So we need to find the asset technician. We have to fly him in.
Yeah.
Does he have a visa? Okay, find a guy with a visa. Okay, that takes us 2 days. Then he gets to India. Then we have to get an airside pass, which takes another 2 days. Okay, he comes, he does the troubleshooting, he says, I need the part. We have to get a part shipped in. Then there's this massive customs fee that has to be paid, and paid up front. So then there's this whole negotiation about, why are we paying 50%? It should be less, backward and forward, backward and forward. That's another 2 days. Okay, the part comes in, gets stuck in customs over the weekend. Waiting. They release it Monday morning. Okay, we get the aircraft back into service. That's 10 days.
Yeah.
That is not something you want to hear in business aviation. And if I'm an owner of an aircraft that's worth, $50 million, and I had a whole bunch of trips I was going to do,
You can't waste,
it's
that
pretty
much
frustrating.
time. Yeah. So, in fact, Nick, that's even as you mentioned that business aviation, it's not just sort of leisure aviation. It's actually business, and business suffers, business hampers, and unfortunately, as far as I see, still business aviation in India is seen as a barometer of wealth, right? Of course it is, but we have to see the impact on the businesses and on the timelines, which I think the mindset is still not there. That okay, business aviation is actually to support businesses. It's not just leisure. So we see a lot of such things in India. How you see, what is the perspective of business aviation in other markets and other mature markets like US? Because it's very flexible, but
Yep.
is it still the mindset? I don't think so, but I would like to hear from you.
Well, the view in the US is time is money.
Correct.
So if you can save time, essentially you can make more money.
Yeah.
So they view business aviation as a tool. One thing in Europe, because I was operating in Europe, they had more of a attitude of it's like a luxury. But I think that changed in COVID.
Okay.
Because we as an operator, when COVID happened, we were kind of like, oh, what does this mean for business aviation? Because essentially everybody got grounded.
Yeah.
Very quickly, business aviation started flying again.
Yeah.
So anybody who had money, who thought that, it's not a good investment, business aviation is kind of a waste of money, started saying to themselves, I need to get around. Like, I still need to do my business.
That's true.
So the way to do that was to charter.
Yeah.
Then people started saying, I need my own aircraft. So we actually saw an improvement. Initially, when COVID started, we were like, this is the end of the business. No operations anymore. Very difficult to get around with COVID and all the restrictions. But quickly, you figure out ways around it. And we saw a lot more people coming into business aviation saying that, okay, I get the value now. Before it was kind of a luxury. Now it's, I need this.
Yeah.
So Europe kind of changed a bit that way. The US, they've always understood that time is money. If you look at the sort of the chain in the US, people start in charter, then they move into fractional ownership, then they go to whole ownership. There's tons and tons of aircraft that are 25, 30 years old flying around the US. That's another issue in India is, you've got this 18-year-old aircraft restriction.
You cannot import that, but if it
Exactly.
is already there, so still you can use it.
But it limits what you can actually buy.
That's true. That's true.
If you get on an Air India aircraft,
Yeah.
they're not going to be 18 years or less. I mean, I've flown a few Air India aircraft, and to be honest, it's almost like they're held together with tape. So I don't know why they limit themselves to 18 years.
So
I think it's a negative.
Yeah, I completely agree. In fact, that's always a debate when it comes to commercial aviation versus business aviation, that why business aviation should be a disadvantage.
Yep.
Now, regarding COVID, as you rightly mentioned, even we saw that change in India during COVID. A lot of, chartering happened, and then people, like, once you are used to chartering, then eventually you may plan to buy a jet, and then,
Yeah.
So that trajectory we have seen. But unfortunately, like with the, say, recent, I'm sure you might be aware of the recent tax announcement of sin tax, which is 40% GST, which was earlier 28% on import of aircraft in the private category. Although, I mean, it's a private category, but a lot of the business houses, they just import the aircrafts in private category for their usage, but ultimately the usage is for the business.
Yep.
So that I think that understanding, because I was expecting that 28% should go to 18%, but it went to 40%.
Yeah.
So, and imagine, because as you know, the Indian market, we have the options to, say, get the aircraft and pay less duty in the NSOP category and things like that. People will find the way out.
Yes.
And say 40, and if we are talking about, say, 50 million jet, no one will pay 40% duty on a 50 million jet. Doesn't make commercial sense.
No. And you're right, people will find a way around it, but the way that they get around it in India is they get themselves a commercial certificate and they operate commercially.
Yeah.
But you're limiting your ability to grow the ecosystem because every company ends up setting up their own flight department. Okay, I'm a software developer, let's say. My expertise is not aircraft operations.
Yeah.
But then I'm forced into becoming an aircraft operator and having to deal with the hassle of doing this and, you know, all the paperwork, dealing with DGCA. There's no real ecosystem of aircraft management companies.
Yeah.
So you never really get the growth of the industry to take aircraft operations out of the business's hands and operate for them. Let the businesses focus on their main business.
That's true.
And grow this infrastructure that can look for investment opportunities. Okay, you know, one of the biggest issues is hangars. I came to visit one of my customers. It was back in 2009, and he said, "Oh, you know, you should go take a look at the aircraft." So one issue is just getting onto the airport. We drive for like 20 minutes. We're driving all around the airfield. And I get there, and it's a Global sitting in the middle of like a junk pile. There's like engines, there's bits of aircraft, because there's no hangars. So aircraft sit outside, which is never good for an aircraft. There's no hangars, there's no FBOs. Fueling is a problem. Permits are a problem. Somebody needs to look at the whole process and say, how do we make this better? Because you don't need to reinvent the wheel in India. Look at what everybody else is doing and pick the best parts and do that. For all sorts of things. Look at what the Saudis are doing. The Saudis, they want to open up business aviation in the kingdom. They're allowing foreign operators to come in and operate point-to-point flights within the kingdom.
Okay.
Why not do that in India? If you want to generate more activity in India, start by letting foreign aircraft come in and do that.
That's not happening.
That's not happening. You're also seeing Indian clients not register in India because it's too complex. And it's too, you know, the aircraft sits on the ground for months. That's crazy.
But if your usage is purely for India, then there is no choice. You have to get it registered in India. I completely understand where you're coming from, because a lot of business houses, those who they are using aircraft only for the international business flying, they are not registered in India. We all know that.
Yes.
And in fact, we are losing on that, because technically they can be VT registered if there is some flexibility.
Yeah. So not only are you not getting the big aircraft that the international businesses are using, you're limiting the ability for the industry to grow within India because you make it so difficult. You know, all these registries, San Marino, Isle of Man, they've all grown up as sort of a business. They understand that aviation is a business, and yes, safety is priority number one.
Of course.
But it's also a business.
Yeah.
So I've dealt with San Marino. They're great. You need something done in a week, boom, you can get it done.
Yeah.
US even, we're operating aircraft in the US. FAA are not let's say the FAA of 10 years ago. They're relatively flexible. They'll work with you. I don't see the same in India.
Okay.
The authorities are very focused on the process rather than how does it impact the business. They don't look at it as how do I help these owners get these aircraft flying. They look at it as what do these owners need to do for me to allow me to do my job.
So you haven't seen any particular change in the last, say, 10, 15 years?
No.
Because no change.
No.
It's been the same through.
And it's everything. It's licensing for pilots, it's training, it's permits, it's getting aircraft registered, getting the paperwork, you know, the backward and forward on all sorts of different things. STCs on aircraft. You know, there's bilateral agreements in place, but I still see the DGCA saying, well, we don't approve that. Well, why don't you approve it? You have a bilateral agreement with the FAA that says you should approve it.
Yeah.
Well, we decided. I mean, how do you deal with that level of we're sort of making it up as we go along?
So I think this version should go to DGCA as well, because of course, being here, the industry, they keep on deliberating this with DGCA, that we need to change, but it's also important for them to know what is the perception outside India, because even I completely agree with you that things have not changed much in the past, and they need to change for the growth of the industry.
The other challenge too is aircraft, once they come into India, once they become VT registered, they become difficult to sell elsewhere in the world.
Yeah.
Because people are concerned about the level of maintenance and the documentation, and if you do any work on the aircraft, how is that paperwork done? And if I try to then import it into my home country, will I be able to do that? And if I need support from the DGCA, how am I going to get that as a buyer? I'm not Indian. I want to buy this aircraft. I'm going to need help from the DGCA.
How will I get it?
That's a deal killer right there.
And like, as you mentioned about maintenance, how do you see the change in India? Because of course, earlier, most of the aircraft for heavy maintenance, they were going outside India.
Yes.
Now, I mean, we have seen a slight change though. And of course, it is an essential part of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Because it's not practical and commercially viable to send each time for your major checks to send the aircraft outside India. So how do you see this how does it impact, and what can be done to, change this process?
I think the Indian authorities, or at least business houses here, should approach the manufacturers and try and get the manufacturers to come in and put their name on a facility. Because a lot of owners want to go to the manufacturer. They feel like, okay, they know what they're doing. It's their aircraft. The facilities here definitely need to improve. I remember when I first came to India, I went to one of the facilities here, and I was shocked in terms of just what it looked like inside compared to a US facility. So if I was a US client and my aircraft was here in India and I needed maintenance being done, they probably wouldn't do it. So the quality of the facilities needs to improve, and the support from the manufacturers needs to improve too.
So is the quality still the same? Because as you said, you visited the facility long back. It's still the same.
I don't know that it's still the same, but definitely the infrastructure is not there. The hangars are not there. The training is not there. I know that there's money going into that sector, but it does need a lift, and the lift that you're probably going to get is from the manufacturers. You need to convince the manufacturers. The challenge you face there is with a fleet of 150, 160 aircraft, there's no point. You've seen Bombardier, for example, investing in Australia, Singapore. They're putting a huge amount of money into their facilities in the US. They're doing it because that's where the fleet is. I know there's a lot of new aircraft coming into India, but at what point does it make sense to put that investment in?
So do you think any sort of collaborations or joint ventures will help? Or is there a lack of trust on the Indian MROs at the moment, so that OEMs are not comfortable with such collaborations? What is your view on that?
Well, in the past, the OEMs did collaborate with Indian MROs, but they changed their strategy and said, okay, we want to try and get as much of this business in-house as we can, so we're going to pull all the authorized service facility accreditations that were given. So Indian facilities kind of lost that. And so from an Indian perspective, they need to go back and convince the OEMs to give it to them. And potentially joint venture or something similar that's going to at least expand the market here in terms of maintenance capabilities, because India has the potential to draw aircraft from other countries as well to do the maintenance. But again, comes back to permitting. You know, if I'm in the country for a certain amount of time, am I going to end up with some kind of tax? Like, people need to understand what does it mean if I do maintenance in India? Not just from, is the maintenance going to be done well? You know, is there going to be some kind of surprise at the end that I've got to pay some kind of tax, or, you know, am I going to get stuck in the country? Those things all need to be clear for aircraft owners.
Okay, and like we were discussing, foreign operators operating in India, of course, like we know, there's a slight barrier, but there is also an option to say join hands with the existing operators, maybe get investment in them, and, you know, again, like a collaboration or a joint venture thing. So, do you see foreign operators, are they exploring this route as well, or their preference is just to operate solely on their own in India?
I think
what is the sentiment?
I think the market's very small, so it's not something that people are looking at. Lots of operators in India have their own NSOP, so you're never going to convince somebody who's got their aircraft on their own NSOP to switch to an operator. So I think it's a challenge at the moment for the operators. You have a group of Indian operators, but I think for foreign operators to come in, they need to see the infrastructure. You know, they need to see the FBOs, they need to see the maintenance capabilities. Without that, it's going to be very difficult.
Okay.
So that's why we come back to, how do we develop the entire industry in India?
So the interest is slightly less at the moment.
Yes.
Okay. So, like, you deal with a lot of Indian business houses, a lot of HNIs. When it comes to, say, buying of the assets, what are the expectations of Indian corporate houses and HNIs, and how different they are from the developed or matured markets?
I think the requirements for quality are the same, but I think the knowledge base of understanding of aircraft is less, because they're just not as experienced. So you end up with, let's say, first-time buyers from India. They don't really know what they should be looking for. You know, is it range? Is it number of seats? Is it, you know, the entertainment system? And I think the other challenge that you face in India is they don't necessarily ask the right people about aviation. Like, my experience in India is that you get a lot of ex-military people in business aviation.
That's true.
From my perspective, those are not the right people. Business aviation is a business. You're running a business, and what people forget is it's about the experience in the aircraft. Owners, when they come and get on an aircraft, what are they doing? They're walking up to the aircraft, they're getting in, they're turning right, and they're sitting in the aircraft. It's about the experience in the cabin. It's not about, you know, is there corrosion on the aircraft? How does it look? It's about the experience. And I think if you take people from a military background, that is not what's happening in the military. Nobody in the military is going to the cabin of a F-15 and looking inside and saying, oh, we need to improve the leather here. So they focus on the wrong things from my perspective. You're running a business. Operating aircraft is a business, you know, usually money losing because it's a big expense. But it's also about the experience in the cabin. So Indian owners, they experience the quality when they go to the US or to Europe. You know, top level FBOs, you know, hangars, maintenance, all of these things, they experience it when they go outside of the country. But then when they're back in the country, they're dealing with the inefficiencies of the system here. And I don't think that they have the right people helping them decide which aircraft to buy. You know, what facilities should we have? The other thing that I see in India, and one of the clients told me this once, is people are not honest with the top people. So one of the clients said, I like you because you tell me the truth. And that made me think, well, kind of what does he mean by that? And I went to a meeting with him and his team, and I was there, and I was saying like, well, I just don't think that's the right thing to do. But nobody in his team wanted to tell him that. So I think they don't get the best advice. So they end up making the wrong decisions.
But are people sort of say fussy for interiors? Because I mean, at least I've heard some stories from people like when we were advising on their sale or purchase from the legal perspective, and we came to know that yes, some people are actually they want interior specifications as per their preferences. So do you see a lot of such trend in India, or as we were discussing that because people those who have experience flying, now they know what they want.
Yeah.
And for the new buyers, yes, you're right. At times, it all depends on the guidance.
Well, when I used to be at Bombardier and we had Indian clients, this was 20 years ago, a lot of Indian clients loved gold, and they wanted, gold taps, everything to be gold. That doesn't necessarily appeal to other regions of the world. So you would see these aircraft, and you would get in and you would say, this is an Indian owner. Right away, you could tell. That's changed. I think Indian owners now are becoming similar to owners everywhere else. They sort of understand that the aircraft's going to have a life here in India, and then it's going to go have a life somewhere else. So if you make the aircraft too specific to the tastes of a smaller group, then you won't be able to resell it.
So that's something new for me, because even I was not aware of this fact.
Yep.
The preference a few years back was of everything should be in gold.
And they were really elaborate taps and towel holders. They were very detailed. It was interesting to see.
So now what has changed? Because I'm sure there is now a lot of interplay with technology in the cabins and, So what has changed? What do you see, irrespective of the region?
Yeah.
What is the current preference in the cabin?
Most buyers want a standard floor plan based on the aircraft because they know that ultimately that's what everybody else wants. It's easier to manage the cabin. There's a lot more focus on connectivity. So lots of discussions around Starlink and Ka band and does it work here, does it work there? So I think that's another big thing that if you are, let's say, running an aircraft management company or you're running an NSOP, you need to be on top of connectivity. It's not just about how does the cabin look.
Yeah.
The owners, they need to be in contact, 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
So they're not going to accept that, okay, I'm taking a 13-hour flight and I can't talk to anybody. So you need to be staying up with whatever's going on. Starlink right now is overtaking Ka band. So even the manufacturers are asking themselves, what are we going to do about this? Because like on a Global 7500, you have Ka as a standard. But a lot of owners are saying, I want Starlink.
Yeah.
So what to do? If you're a manufacturer, you need to be thinking about that, because it's being driven by the buyers who are saying, that's what I want.
And this is such a requirement that, no one can ignore it. OEMs cannot say that, we can't give you Starlink here.
Yeah.
Because connectivity is essential these days.
Yeah.
And as you said, like if it is a long flight, people don't want to stay disconnected.
And that's another conversation you end up having with potential buyers. You talk to them about buying an aircraft and they say, okay, this is my budget. I want to get a 2015 aircraft, for example. So then you start telling them, well, the internet speed is like, 30 kilobytes. And they're like, there's no way I can live with that.
That's not work, yeah. That will not
But
work.
that's what you're dealing with. When you buy a 10-year-old aircraft, you've got an internet system that is not just 10 years old, it's probably 13 years old because, they had to get it certified, put it in the aircraft, deliver the aircraft. And when you talk to owners about that, it's sort of like, well, okay, I want to upgrade. I mean, an upgrade of the cabin management system could be $1 million.
Yeah, yeah.
And the aircraft's going to sit on the ground for 2 months. So these are all things that have to be taken into account. And owners don't necessarily understand the dynamics of, okay, I'm buying this aircraft, and I didn't know that the cabin management system is super slow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that there was a huge inspection coming up in 9 months. These are all things that they need to be advised on. They're not supposed to be experts in buying aircraft. They're running their business, whatever their business is.
Yeah.
They just need good advice so they don't get surprises, because Indian owners are no different than anybody else. They don't want surprises. They don't want to be told, oh, by the way, your aircraft's going to be down for 3 months. It's probably going to cost you $3 million. Nobody wants to hear that. So that's where the advice matters. And I think that's where Indian owners are looking for people to just be honest with them and tell them, you shouldn't buy that because of this reason. They're logical. If you tell them the reasons why, they will get it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of talk in India also now about fractional ownership. And of course, there are guidelines which have not been finalized yet, but they are there. But coming on the mindset, do you see, since you deal with a lot of Indian HNIs and Indian promoters, do you see that mindset there? Will they be willing to do fractional ownerships?
I think the group that own aircraft today, no. You're sort of asking them to take a step back. I just don't see it. They've already got aircraft. They're going to stick with the aircraft they have. But it's the next generation who are coming through that do a lot of charter. But they don't want to jump up to owning their own aircraft. It's no different than Europe or the United States. Fractional ownership's really taken off. It took longer in Europe to get off the ground, but it's well established now.
Yeah.
The US, I mean, you've got probably over 1,000 aircraft in fractional ownership.
Oh, that's a good number.
It's a massive industry in the US. I think for India, the challenge still comes back to the infrastructure. You don't have that many airports. How do you... There's very few FBOs. I mean, how are you going to make fractional ownership work? Yes, the logic is there for aircraft ownership and how you structure it from a legal perspective, but the practical operations, how is that going to work? If there's no FBOs and no airports, very hard to make it work.
And of course, there are other challenges, like, because, when people are investing such a kind of money, they also look for, say, depreciation benefits, and what kind of GST will be imposed, who is operating, because that, as we were discussing, that you can't, say, give an aircraft to operate to a third party. That's a slight challenge. So keeping that into account, so I think that's going to take some time, because people want the tax incentives and depreciation incentives in this structure as well. I'm not sure how it's... do fractional owners get all these tax incentives and depreciation benefits in Europe and US? Is that the case?
Europe is different because it's a whole, there's a whole group of different countries with different tax structures. The one I'm more familiar with is the US. So they buy a piece of the asset and they can depreciate that.
I mean, the fractional owners can do that?
Yes.
Okay.
The challenge that nobody really thinks about in fractional ownership is you get the surprise at the end when you go to resell the asset or renew, and then they say, well, I know we said it was going to be this much in depreciation, but it's actually more in terms of the value of the aircraft. It's dropped more than we thought. So that was the big issue in fractional ownership, was people would buy in. They'd have a 5-year contract. They get to the end of the 5 years. They're expecting to get X back for their share, and they would get much less. So on a per hour basis, when you factor in the loss on the aircraft, it was costing a lot more. I think they've done a better job now of just understanding the market and factoring in what is the cost per hour, because that's another thing. If you're a buyer, how much is this costing me? Versus chartering or owning the entire aircraft. There's sort of steps that if you're doing 20 hours a year, just charter. If you get up to 100 hours a year, fractional ownership probably makes sense. If you get to 400 hours, having your own aircraft is probably the answer. Just depends where you are.
Okay. So to sum up, how do you see Indian business aviation in the next 10 years? And also the regulator.
I think the regulator has a big role to play. If the regulator looks at other countries and says, okay, that works, that's what we could do here, you could take the brakes off business aviation in India and you could expand the fleet massively. But not only expand the fleet, expand business aviation coming into India. From a business perspective, from a leisure perspective, travel perspective, if you want to bring in high net worth individuals, you have to make it easy for them.
Yeah.
They're used to ease of use in Europe, North America, South America. They just don't want to deal with headaches. That's the whole point of business aviation, is to make it easy to travel. So I think the regulator needs to look at everything that they can potentially impact, but also you need investment in the infrastructure here. But I think the first step is the government, in terms of looking at it and saying, is this an industry that we want to grow? And how are we going to grow it? India is going to be the third largest economy in, very soon. So that wealth creation is going to allow people to buy assets or use business aviation assets. It's just a question of how easy does the government want to make it for people to use that? And I know there's the trade-off of, it's kind of the rich class having ease of access to aircraft. But, in the United States, they don't look at it that way. They look at it as a tool to get around. If you've done well for yourself, people are happy for you. I sort of have the same feeling in India, that people are happy for their captains of industry who've done well. They should have the ability to grow their businesses by using business aviation. So I think ultimately you come back to the government and how quickly or how easily are they going to let that happen.
So I think it will all depend on ease of operations. The market will depend on that.
Yes.
If we can sum up.
Yes, it's all about the infrastructure.
Yeah.
Some things you could quickly change, like permitting. Why does it take 3 days to get a permit when you can get a permit in other countries in like 2 hours? These are all things that somebody just needs to look at and say, okay, what are best practices somewhere else? Don't reinvent the wheel. Let's do that. Because you look at other regions, they're well advanced in business aviation. So it's not like India is sort of on the frontier here. They're not. Just take whatever is working somewhere else and apply it to the Indian market.
And expedite the process.
Exactly. And if you look at SAF as a sort of second topic, India could potentially be on the frontier. If you look at what everybody else is doing, they're not that far ahead. So here, potentially India could play a leading role and set up an industry that you can supply everybody else. Reduce your dependence on foreign oil. Give the farmers something to grow and guaranteed revenue. It's sort of circular in a sense. So there's an opportunity there with SAF, which is part of the reason I'm here, because I see the opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you, Nick. Thank you for this conversation, and thank you for giving us a global perspective and telling us honestly that what do you think what lacks in India, and I completely agree with you that these are the changes which are required to be made for the growth of business aviation. So thank you very much, and thank you to our viewers. If you want to know more about business aviation, please feel free to write to us, drop a comment, or write to me at legittalkwithlovejeet@gmail.com. Thank you.